This is the Twilight Whispers Club. The sky dims, the wind stills, and somewhere between day and night, a story leans in to speak. These whispers aren't loud, but they stay with you. You've been invited. Lean in close and listen. Cold steel, catching the wan motel light. That pistol wasn't part of any mistaken identity scenario I'd rehearsed. No, this cramped, sepulchral room at the last stop inn was transforming, second by terrifying second, into a stage for horrors my waking mind couldn't conjure. A pause, nothing more. A brief punctuation mark in the long sentence of my cross-country trek. The last stop in, a skeletal relic clinging to the highway's edge, promised little beyond cheap, fitful sleep. Decrepit, forgotten by time and travelers alike, its peeling paint and flickering vacancy sign were a siren song to my exhausted wallet. The clerk, entombed by the glow of a cathode ray tube, barely registered my existence, sliding the key to number 7 across the counter. 11, he mumbled, a dismissal aimed back at the droning infomercial. My duffel landed with a soft thud on the cracked vinyl chair. Across the bruised asphalt, under that stuttering neon sign bleeding red light onto weathered doors, I trudged. Somewhere nearby, a feline shriek sliced the stillness, making my nerves jump. Room 7 smelled of stale cigarettes and damp regret. Wallpaper curled away from the walls like sunburnt skin. A bed, slumped and weary. Just a bed. But as I bent to unlace my boots, the night air carried sound, voices tight with venom, urgent. Instinct, perhaps foolish, drew me to the window. Through a smear on the grimy pane, 3 shadows coalesced around a dark monolith of an SUV. Frenetic gestures punctuated their hushed, angry dialogue. "Never meant to get this loud," one hissed. "Need to dissolve. Regroup." "Dissolve?" spat another. "With half the state troopers sniffing our exhaust, we evaporate now." Leaning closer, straining against the muffling glass, my elbow connected with the frail nightstand. The lamp, a cheap plastic thing, wobbled, then plummeted. Its crash echoed like a gunshot in the pregnant quiet. Outside, silence screamed. "The wind," I prayed. "That damned cat." Futile hope. Bootsteps crunched on gravel, heavy, purposeful, coming right for my door. I barely had time to recoil before the flimsy wood splintered inward. 2 figures filled the frame. Both held pistols. "Well now," drawled the taller silhouette, voice like chipped ice. "Seems we found a little mouse listening at the keyhole." My hands shot up, palms out. "A mistake," I stammered, voice a thin reed. "Just passing through. Heard nothing." "Can it?" the second one snapped, his gun gesturing sharply towards the violated doorway. "Outside. Move." They propelled me back into the cool night air, across the fractured parking lot towards the waiting SUV and the third man, whose face was a mask of impatience. "Who the hell is this?" he demanded. "Listener," the tall one, Lurch, I'd later learned to call him in my head, supplied. "In number 7. The third man's eyes, sharp and assessing, narrowed. 7? Impossible. That room was clean. Ours. A shard of ice slid down my spine. Not just thugs arguing, criminals expecting sanctuary. My sanctuary. Please, I pleaded. It's a mix-up. The clerk gave me the key. I'm just traveling. Quiet, barked the leader, Silas. His authority was palpable. Check him. Rough hands invaded my pockets, extracting my wallet. A driver's license flipped open under the weak security light. Elias Vance, Lurch read, from Nebraska. Silas's gaze pinned me. That real? Or just a name you borrowed? It's real, I insisted, desperation threading my voice. Headed to California, new tech job. I have the offer letter, see? Enough. Silas cut me off, turning to the others. Put him in the vehicle. We roll. Panic clawed at my throat. Wait, no, you can't just... People know I'm here. They'll ask. Silas's laugh was devoid of warmth, a dry rattle. Trust me, friend. By the time anyone misses Elias Vance, we'll be ghosts. And you better pray you're just some nobody who tripped over the wrong wire. I was bundled into the back of the SUV, Lurch crowding me, his presence a heavy weight. The other two claimed the front. Engines roared, tires spat gravel, and the last stop in vanished behind us. Outside, the sparse lights of civilization bled into an ocean of darkness, then trackless desert. Hours melted together. I tried marking turns, etching phantom landmarks onto my memory, but the blackness swallowed everything. Eventually, the smooth asphalt gave way to a jarring, rutted track that punished the suspension for miles. We shuddered to a halt before a structure barely deserving the name cabin, a dilapidated husk slumping under a bruised sky, windows boarded like blind eyes. Inside, a single bare bulb sputtered to life, carving harsh planes of light and shadow across dust-choked surfaces. A table, listing chairs, a defeated couch, relics of forgotten habitation. Sit, Silas commanded, indicating a rickety chair. He stood over me, face an unreadable cipher in the stark glare. All right, Elias Vance from Nebraska. Time to sing. Who are you really? Who sent you? My thoughts scrambled. They saw a plant, a rival, law enforcement perhaps. The sheer unbelievable banality of the truth, an IT guy chasing a dream westward, felt like the weakest lie. Yet invention now seemed a faster path to oblivion. So, the truth spilled out. The mind-numbing code I wrote in Omaha, the siren call of a San Francisco startup, the impulsive decision to drive, to see something before the next chapter began. I spoke of Clara, the girl I'd left behind, our fragile pact of long-distance hope. I watched their expressions flicker under the swinging bulb. Silas remained stone, but in the eyes of Lurch and the third one, Mick, a seed of doubt seemed to sprout. Silence stretched taut when I finished. If, Silas finally intoned, the word heavy with skepticism. If that's the straight story, you drew the short straw tonight, kid. A real short one. My breath hitched. Problem is, he continued, circling slowly, we can't just cut you loose. You saw faces. You heard things. Even if you're just lost baggage, that's risk we don't carry. My stomach plummeted. The desert grave felt suddenly tangible. But then, Lurch shifted his weight. Boss, what if we keep him close? Just till this blows over, till the exchange is done, then drop him somewhere remote. By the time he finds a phone, we're vapor. Silas chewed this over, his gaze drilling into me. And if he bolts, if he ain't the innocent lamb? Lurch shrugged, a massive ripple of his shoulders. Then we handle it. But this way, maybe we don't ice some civvy for nothing. I barely breathed, hope a fragile butterfly in my chest. An eternity later, Silas gave a curt nod. Fine, he's on you, Lurch. He steps wrong, it's your neck. Relief slammed into me, potent as liquor, chased immediately by cold dread. Spared, yes, but now a prisoner, tethered to volatile men playing a high-stakes game I didn't understand. The following days bled into a tense montage of movement. Flophouses, abandoned shacks, never settling, always listening for sirens. I gleaned fragments, a heist, jewels lifted from a private trove, something gone sideways, leaving them exposed, hunted. They watched me constantly, Lurch a silent, looming shadow. Yet proximity bred a strange, wary familiarity. The leader was Silas, the tall one, Lurch, the wiry, nervous one, Mick. It was Mick, during a long, static-filled night listening to the crackle of a police scanner, who filled in the blanks. Rare gems, supposed to be clean, surgical. But alarms tripped, leaving them scrambling, deeper in the mire than they'd planned. Listening to Mick's fretful recounting, a desperate gamble began to crystallize in my mind. Risky? Lethal, potentially. But what other door remained open? Night 5 found us squatting in the shell of a derelict gas station off some forgotten highway. Silas and Lurch had vanished into the darkness, meeting a contact, leaving Mick as my sole guardian. His attention drifted, snagged by the urgent chatter on the scanner. Now, I launched myself from the grimy floor, aiming for the pistol holstered at his hip. He reacted with surprising speed, a blur of motion. We crashed together, grappling, limbs flailing in the dim, dusty light. He was sinewy, stronger than he looked, but terror lent me a frantic energy. My fingers scrabbled, closed around the checkered grip. A roar filled the small space, impossibly loud. Mick collapsed, boneless. Blood bloomed dark on his shirt. No. I hadn't meant no time. Headlights swept across the boarded windows. Silas and Lurch, returning. My hands, slick with sweat and shaking violently, fumbled for the SUV keys lying on an overturned crate. Then I ran, bursting out into the vast, uncaring night. Mile after frantic mile, devoured beneath the wheels, the SUV a stolen chariot hurtling through darkness. Every flicker in the rearview mirror was imagined pursuit. None came. Dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised pastels when I finally risked stopping, finding a lonely payphone at a windswept truck stop, its plastic receiver cool against my ear as I dialed the police. What followed was a maelstrom, blinking lights, clipped questions, FBI agents with tired eyes. The gems surfaced. Silas and Lurch were apprehended. Newspapers briefly painted Elias Vance as an accidental hero. Hero? No. Just a survivor, marked by the fire. Years have passed. The sharp edges have softened, but the memory remains, a phantom limb. I see the world differently now, aware of the precarious membrane between the mundane and the monstrous. Caution is my companion, gratitude my creed. Gratitude for quiet nights, for unlocked doors, for the simple freedom of the road. And whenever the highway leads past some desolate motel, clinging to the edge of nowhere, a silent prayer escapes me. Thankful, profoundly thankful, to just be passing through. Because you never truly know when the next stop might demand everything you have. My headlamp snagged upon something roadside, an anomaly where only darkness should have reigned. That much is crystalline now. Logic dictates I should have kept going, accelerator pinned, music shrieking, windows sealed tight. But defiance, or perhaps morbid curiosity, prevailed. Hence this frantic script, penned by trembling hands, an attempt to tether the unreality of last night on County Road 119 to the mundane world. Nearly 6 hours I'd piloted this aging sedan, returning from a sterile client engagement in Columbus to the quiet isolation of my rural home. The dashboard glowed 11:43 p.m. My vision swam, fatigued by the ceaseless consumption of the blacktop ribbon ahead, my spine a dull throb against the worn seat fabric. The blower motor whined, a feeble defense against the October cold that seeped through steel and glass. County Road 119 unspooled before me, desolate, a 2-lane passage carved through dense, encroaching timberland. No sentinels of electric light stood guard here, only my own beams pushed back the oppressive gloom. Trees clawed at the edges of the light, skeletal branches overreaching like supplicating hands. No other vehicle had crossed my path for what felt like an eternity, perhaps 40 minutes by the clock. My hand groped for the travel mug. Its emptiness echoed the rasp in my throat. The radio, my erstwhile companion, devolved into sputtering static, reception a fickle ghost in these parts, more noise than signal. I silenced it with a click, leaving only the hypnotic hum of tires on pavement, the engine's steady pulse. And then I registered it. A silhouette, stark and motionless against the gravel verge, perhaps 50 yards distant. My light swept across it as the road banked gently left. A human form, initially, 6 feet tall, cloaked in something dark. Yet an intrinsic wrongness emanated from its posture, an unnatural stillness, less a living being than a daguerreotype frozen in time. Instinct, not conscious decision, lifted my foot from the accelerator. Out here, a stranded soul wasn't beyond possibility. My velocity bled away. 60, 50, 40. The shape loomed larger through the windshield, 30 miles per hour, 20. Details paradoxically refused to coalesce. My high beams struck it squarely now. Barely 20 feet separated us. I crept past at 15. The silhouette remained utterly inert. It wore what resembled a long, dark coat, reaching its knees, yet the fabric hung dead, impervious to the breeze that stirred the roadside weeds. Its arms dangled unnervingly long, fingers extending past the midpoint of its thighs. Its face, though, it was the absence of a face that seized my gut, leaching warmth from my hands clamped on the steering wheel. Where features should have been etched, eyes, nose, mouth, there existed only profound blackness. Not shadow, not the concealment of a hood or mask, but a pure negation, a patch of reality seemingly erased. The light illuminated the drape of its clothes, the general architecture of a head, Yet that vacant space devoured the photons, a lightless singularity. My foot found the brake. The sedan drifted to a near halt. Every primal urge shrieked, accelerate, escape, but a terrible fascination held me captive. The present stood less than 10 feet from my window now. It offered no acknowledgement, no turn of its head, remaining fixed, facing the road ahead, that appalling void where a face should be perpetually oriented forward. Tremors racked my hands. Perspiration trickled down my spine, despite the chill. The engine idled, its mechanical thrum suddenly deafening in the profound quiet. I couldn't wrench my gaze away. The darkness occupying its face seemed to throb, to deepen, a well without a bottom. Then, movement, not the fluid, articulated motion of flesh and bone. A glitch, a skip. One instant, it faced the asphalt ribbon. The next, its entire form had rotated 90 degrees, confronting my car directly. No transition, no pivot, no shuffle of feet. An instantaneous reorientation. A scream coiled tight in my throat. My foot slammed the accelerator. The engine screamed in protest. The car surged violently forward. A glance in the side mirror confirmed the impossible. Another spasmodic shift. It now occupied the center of the lane behind me. My taillights painted it crimson. That featureless head canted at an angle defying all anatomical possibility. I pushed the engine harder, 60, 70. The motor howled its strain. Trees became indistinct blurs. In the rear view, the figure diminished, a static sentinel marooned in the road's center, still oriented towards my frantic retreat. My hands shook so violently the steering wheel vibrated. The road twisted serpentine through the forest. I took the curves with reckless abandon, tires complaining shrilly. Each subsequent check of the mirror revealed only empty pavement swallowed by the night. Perhaps 5 minutes passed in this high-speed fugue before my breathing began to regulate. My death grip on the wheel eased fractionally. Whatever that entity was, it was behind me now. The mirror reflected only receding darkness. I moderated my speed, the image of wrapping the car around an ancient oak suddenly vivid. My heart still hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The dashboard clock displayed 11:52 p.m. Only 9 minutes had elapsed since the initial sighting. It felt like lifetimes. The radio crackled abruptly back to life, startling a yelp from me. Harsh static erupted from the speakers, despite my having switched it off. I jabbed the power button repeatedly. The static persisted, escalating in volume. The dashboard lights flickered erratically. My eyes shot to the rear-view mirror again. It occupied the back seat. The scream ripped from my lungs, raw and involuntary. The car slewed sideways as my arms spasmed. I wrestled for control, tires losing purchase on the asphalt. Through the chaos, the thing remained impossibly still, that blank concavity aimed squarely at the back of my skull. I wrenched the wheel hard, initiating a desperate, controlled skid. Brakes shrieked. The world outside became a spinning vortex of light and shadow. The car pirouetted once, twice, finally shuddering to a halt, facing the direction from which I'd come. No thought, no strategy, only pure instinct propelled me. I flung the driver's door open and hurled myself out onto the cold tarmac. I scrambled towards the woods, their Stygian depths promising concealment. But as my shoes crunched on the gravel shoulder, The folly struck me. The thing was behind me, somewhere in the encompassing darkness, and I possessed no light, no way to navigate the treacherous terrain. Only the car's headlamps provided sanctuary, casting elongated, dancing shadows among the trees. I spun around, backing away from the vehicle. The rear seat appeared vacant now. The radio still vomited static, preternaturally loud in the nocturnal stillness. A flicker of movement snagged my periphery. It stood beside the trunk of my car. No approach, no footsteps. It had simply materialized there. That null space face swiveled towards me. The arms hung wrong, elongated, fingertips brushing the ground. I retreated faster, stumbling on the uneven earth. The entity jerked forward, not walking, not traversing the intervening space, but appearing. Several feet closer with each glitch, each stutter in the fabric of the night, like viewing a slideshow with most of the frames excised. My back collided with the rough bark of a tree. The figure halted 10 feet away. Static roared from the car speakers, its pitch ascending into an ear-splitting shriek. The headlights began to flicker violently, strobing the scene like faulty projection equipment. The thing's head tilted again, impossibly far, until it was nearly parallel with the ground. That void gazed at me. The radio static achieved a piercing, painful crescendo. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. My legs buckled, and I slid down the trunk to sit amongst the roots and fallen leaves. The sound bored into my skull, even through the barrier of my palms. The strobing light pulsed against my closed eyelids. Then, abrupt silence. I remained there, coiled tight, shaking, eyes clamped shut. Nothing. No sound but my own ragged gasps and the ambient susurrus of the forest night. No light but the steady, unwavering beams of my car, painting the inside of my eyelids. Hesitantly, slowly, I opened my eyes. The road lay empty. My sedan sat undisturbed, engine running, driver's door agape. No figure, no static. Only the chirping of crickets and a soft breeze whispering through the leaves. For several long minutes, I stayed pressed against the tree, braced for its reappearance. It did not come. Eventually, my respiration steadied. My legs felt capable of supporting me. I approached the car with extreme caution, every nerve taut, poised to flee, should that blankness manifest again. Nothing stirred but shadows, animated by the wind, playing with the headlight beams. The radio was inert, though untouched by me. The back seat remained empty. I slid behind the wheel, slammed the door, thumbed the lock. My hands still trembled as I engaged the transmission. I turned the car around, checking every mirror with obsessive frequency, and resumed my journey, pushing the speed limit far beyond reason on the winding road. The remaining 2 hours passed in a blur of hypervigilance. Every roadside shadow caused me to flinch. Every stray crackle from the radio sent ice through my veins, but the figure did not reappear. When I finally coasted into my driveway, the eastern horizon bled with the first hints of pre-dawn gray. I sat for a long while, engine silenced, staring numbly ahead. My mind scrabbled for rational explanations: exhaustion, profound stress, a waking nightmare induced by caffeine and sleep deprivation. Yet the image persisted, indelible, That absence of a face, the impossible physics of its movement, the fundamental wrongness, seared into my memory with terrifying clarity. Inside, I secured every lock, drew every curtain. I sat in the living room as dawn painted the windows gray, sleep an impossibility. I called in sick, spending the day attempting self-deception, trying to will the experience into unreality. But last night, precisely 24 hours after that initial roadside encounter, my radio switched itself on. Static, initially faint. Then, woven beneath the white noise, another sound emerged. Respiration, but distorted, wet, ragged, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. I rushed to check the windows, and there it stood, on my front lawn, that featureless void aimed up at my window. As I watched, paralyzed, it jerked closer to the house, closer, closer. I write this now, huddled in the dark confines of my bedroom closet. The static intensifies. The breathing sound grows louder, more intimate. I can hear it moving through my house, those staccato, impossible shifts drawing nearer. It's outside my bedroom door now. The doorknob is turning slowly. I don't understand its purpose. I don't know why I was chosen. But of this, I am utterly certain. Should you find yourself driving the lonely roads late at night, and your lights illuminate a solitary figure standing by the verge, do not slow down. Do not stop. Drive like hell itself is on your heels, and pray it failed to notice you. The closet door is opening. The memory remains vivid. Stepping across the threshold into that lobby, an airless space breathing the scent of dust and forgotten decades. Above the deserted front desk, a solitary bulb pulsed erratically, throwing unreliable light. Exhaustion clung to me, a heavy cloak after a day steeped in negotiations, yet an undeniable wrongness permeated the atmosphere. I dismissed it. The price was negligible, the location convenient, and oblivion on a mattress was my sole desire. I signed myself over, oblivious to the fact that my nights would soon belong to disembodied voices adrift in a vacant corridor. My name is Arthur. Commerce keeps me perpetually in motion, a transient existence favoring modest inns, where sleep and a shower are the extent of my requirements. That evening, the clock hands neared 10 as I arrived. Behind the counter slumped a man whose shirt seemed sculpted from wrinkles, his eyes dull. Only the third floor held vacancies, he murmured. A shrug sufficed for my reply. The register received my signature. In return, I received not a plastic card, but a heavy old-world key, its teeth worn smooth. Room 312. The ascent was via a cage elevator, a relic whose rattling gait and groaning mechanics punctuated the journey upward. With each floor passed, a slight lurch sent shivers through the metal box. Inside, the light was weak, cadaverous. My own reflection stared back from the burnished, scratched steel, a portrait of fatigue. When the doors grated open onto the third floor, they revealed a corridor stretching into dim infinity in both directions. The carpet, a morass of indeterminate brown, bore darker stains along the skirting boards. Wallpaper, once perhaps cream, now faded and peeling, clung precariously to the plaster like ancient skin. Silence reigned, profound and absolute, amplifying the echo of my own weary footsteps toward my designated room. Room 312 materialized on the right, adjacent to a small, neglected table supporting a vase thick with grime. The hallway itself smelled faintly of laundered linen left too long in storage. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, compact, austere. A narrow bed pressed against one wall, opposite a single window, shrouded by a heavy drape that suffocated the ambient city glow. A lone chair huddled near the window. A dresser bore a mirror, whose surface swam, clouded, as if resisting reflection. The faint, cloying aroma of aged wood hung in the air. My suitcase landed with a soft thud on the bedspread. Jacket shed. A cursory inspection revealed no complimentary water. The bathroom tap would have to suffice. I twisted the faucet. After a pregnant pause and a faint hiss, water emerged, eventually running clear. It tasted faintly of metal, a minerality I was too drained to protest. Teeth brushed, preparations made, I extinguished the lights. Darkness enveloped me, broken only by the low hum from an air vent and the sporadic ticking of ancient heating pipes contracting in the walls. I surrendered to the quiet, closing my eyes. Around midnight, thirst stirred me. The room felt thick with stale, heated air, my throat a desert. Sitting up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I became aware of a sound from beyond the door, a whisper, delicate as moth wings. It possessed the intimacy of a hushed conversation, perhaps from an adjoining room, through walls unforgivably thin. That was the logical explanation. I swung my legs out of bed, the floorboards cool beneath my feet, and eased open the door. The corridor lights cast a weak, jaundiced glow. The whispering intensified slightly, yet remained stubbornly unintelligible. A low, sibilant murmuring, like someone confiding secrets to the air itself. It seemed anchored near the next door down, 314. My gaze fixed on it, noting the absence of any light spilling from beneath. The hallway stretched vacant in both directions. A peculiar chill traced a path up my spine. Then, abruptly as it began, the whispering ceased. I padded down the hall to the communal bathroom, drew a glass of water, and retreated to my room. Sleep proved elusive, my mind replaying that soft, insistent voice, picturing someone pacing, restless, just beyond the partition. I listened, expectant, but only silence answered. Morning found me downstairs, seeking coffee in the lobby's gloom. The same clerk presided, looking only marginally more awake. Casually, I inquired about room 314, mentioning the voices. He regarded me with unnerving stillness for several seconds before offering a non-committal shrug. No one occupied 314, he stated flatly. He added, almost as an afterthought, that such complaints surfaced occasionally, nocturnal conversations with no discernible source. That was the extent of his explanation. I waited, anticipating more, but he merely took a slow sip of his coffee, his gaze drifting away. A profound unease settled within me. Shaking it off, I departed for the day's obligations. The hours bled away, and by 7 that evening, I was back, a takeaway burger clutched in hand. I consumed it in the relative sanctuary of my room. The hallway, outside, blessedly silent. The previous night's strangeness, I actively pushed away. The television offered fuzzy distraction, channels flickering past in a meaningless parade until I settled on a local news broadcast, letting its drone fill the space. By 10, weary once more, I switched it off. A sliver of light from the partially open bathroom door felt necessary against the room's inherent gloom. I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone, the mattress protesting beneath me, the pillows insubstantial. Eventually, despite the lumps and the lingering disquiet, I drifted towards sleep. Hours later, my eyes snapped open. The sound, that same intimate susurrus. My heart gave a painful leap, its frantic rhythm drumming in my ears. It emanated from the hallway again, a quiet but persistent murmur, unnervingly close, as if someone stood just outside, engaged in a private monologue. Breathing deliberately, slowly, I sat up and listened. The volume never rose above a whisper, yet its proximity felt invasive. I swung my legs to the floor, walked toward the door, my mouth suddenly parched, palms slick with nervous sweat. Pressing my ear to the cool wood, the voice continued, a stream of sound devoid of discernible words. Male, perhaps? Impossible to be certain. Drawing a steadying breath, I turned the lock and eased the door open a fraction. Dim lights, empty corridor. I pulled the door fully open and stepped out into the hallway. The sound immediately diminished, fading to an almost inaudible thread. Tentatively, I approached room 314, placing my ear against its door. Silence. My gaze swept the long expanse. Elevator at one end, glowing red exit sign at the other. A series of closed, anonymous doors between. Utter stillness. Nothing moved. Retreating to my room, I secured the lock. A tremor ran through my arms. My forehead felt damp. Switching on the main light, I sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. 5 minutes passed. Then, I heard it again, fainter now, muffled, seeming to emanate from within the very walls around me. I fumbled for my phone, activated the recorder, hoping to capture proof. Playback revealed only the hiss of static and the ragged sound of my own breathing. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I wasn't imagining it. I knew I wasn't. Yet the absence of evidence felt like a phantom limb, undeniably present, yet impossible to grasp. The following day, I confronted the clerk once more. His response was another shrug, accompanied by, "Happens sometimes. Nobody knows where it comes from." My insistence yielded nothing further, only the vague admission that this phenomenon had persisted for years, a contributing factor to the third floor's chronic vacancies. Why then continue renting these rooms? People rarely stayed long, he explained, and management seemed unperturbed. I requested a room change. Impossible. A large conference had filled the hotel. Trapped. The company covered this expense. Footing the bill for another hotel felt prohibitive. I resolved to endure. Earplugs, perhaps, the television left on low all night. Ignore it. Yet, a contrary impulse stirred. A need to understand, to solve this unsettling equation. Unexplained anomalies grated against my nature. That evening, returning after another draining day, the hotel felt heavier, the air thick with unspoken history. A hot shower and leftover takeout did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. Attempting work on my laptop proved futile. The Wi-Fi crawled, pages loading with agonizing slowness. I surrendered. A palpable sense of anticipation hung in the room, a certainty that the moment the lights went out, the whispering would resume its vigil. Midnight approached, my eyelids heavy. I clicked off the bedside lamp, leaving the bathroom light on again, as a frail defense against total darkness. Closing my eyes, I focused on the vent's dull drone. Perhaps an hour drifted by before the sound returned. Quiet, incessant chatter, seeming closer even than the night before. I sat bolt upright, heart hammering, a constricting pressure tightening around my chest, making each breath feel shallow. Gooseflesh prickled my skin. The nape of my neck turned cold. I rose, compelled toward the door, leaning against it once more. The whisper was undeniably right there, inches away, as if someone pressed their mouth near the keyhole, muttering an endless, sibilant stream. A sudden surge of anger eclipsed my fear. I wrenched the door open, exposing the hallway. Empty, left, right, nothing but stillness and shadows. The anger curdled into raw nerves. Standing there in my sleep clothes, I scanned the vacant corridor, desperation mounting. I walked the length of it, down to the window at the far end, peering around corners, seeking any possible hiding place. Nothing. Every door remained shut. The elevator indicator stubbornly pointed to the ground floor. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frustrated shout built in my throat, stifled only by the thought of disturbing other guests. Hurrying back, I slammed the door shut, shot the bolt, and slid the chain across. My mind raced. Sleep now, an impossibility. I lay rigid in bed, muscles locked, eyes fixed on the door, half expecting the knob to turn. Seeking distraction on my phone proved fruitless. The weak signal offered no escape. Eventually, sheer exhaustion pulled me under, into a fitful, dream-haunted state. On my final night, a profound weariness settled over me before I even reached the third floor. The day had been fraught with its own stresses. I had no reserves left for spectral disturbances. Returning at 9, clutching a cold soda from a nearby shop, my strategy was simple: stay awake until fatigue overwhelmed consciousness itself. I sat on the bed, sipping the soda, the television flickering with its usual snowy reception. A news anchor discussed an impending heat wave. The words barely registered. Emails checked. Nothing demanded attention. Around 11:30, distinct footsteps sounded in the hall. Soft, deliberate, they ceased directly outside my door. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. I killed the TV's volume, straining to hear. The low whisper returned, punctuated this time by a soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tapping, like fingernails lightly drumming on the wood. My heart constricted. Moving with ghost-like quiet, I approached the door, torn between confrontation and retreat. The tapping persisted for several more seconds. Then silence fell once more. I stood frozen, my breathing shallow and rapid. A minute stretched into 2. Nothing. With trembling fingers, I undid the deadbolt, opening the door just a crack. No one. The corridor light seemed to flicker more intensely now. Stillness. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice thin, swallowed by the emptiness. It echoed back, mocking me. Pulling the door wider, I stepped out. The hallway yawned, vacant as ever. A chill draft touched my bare skin. I made a perfunctory check towards the elevator, then retreated quickly to my room, securing the door for the last time. Sleep that night was a fractured affair, punctuated by phantom sounds, creaks, sighs, whispers that seemed to drift from the ceiling, the walls, the hallway, never settling in one place. By 5 a.m., defeated, I surrendered. I packed my belongings, showered, and descended to the lobby. The night man was still there, or perhaps back again. He inquired, almost kindly, if I'd managed any rest. "No," I replied. He nodded slowly, a gesture heavy with resignation, as if confirming a diagnosis he'd delivered countless times before. He offered a mumbled apology, his own eyes shadowed with fatigue. Checkout was swift. A taxi waited. As it pulled away from the curb, I glanced back at the hotel's tired brick facade, its dull windows like vacant eyes. Relief washed over me, potent and clean. Yet, even in the taxi's relative safety, my mind kept circling back to those sibilant murmurs in the dead of night. I resolved to push it away. A flight awaited. Work beckoned. But the place hasn't entirely let go. Sometimes, unbidden, the image surfaces. Those long, shadowed corridors, the unsettling intimacy of that unseen voice. Knowing others have shared the experience offers cold comfort. I will never return. A lesson learned in the currency of sleep and sanity. Some bargains, no matter how convenient, carry too high a price. Should whispering ever again seep through a hotel wall, I'm leaving, cost be damned. That third-floor haunting is an education I need no refresher course in. The wilderness beckoned, promising respite. Just Reese and me, Liam, seeking sanctuary for 2 days deep within the timberland, an escape from the city's relentless hum. Provisions were meticulously arranged, canvas shelters, sustenance, torches against the dark, a few ales for quiet contemplation. This ritual, escaping into the green embrace, was familiar terrain for us. Day 1 unfolded flawlessly. We discovered an ideal enclave, a sun-dappled clearing ringed by ancient sentinels, comfortably distant from the worn path, yet sufficiently hidden to promise solitude. Canvas homes rose, a modest fire blossomed, and as twilight painted the sky in bruised hues, contentment settled over us. Around the flickering heart of our camp, we talked, the easy cadence of conversation touching on careers, existence, the minutiae lost in urban clamor. Night deepened, hushing the woods. Flames danced, bathing our faces in flickering amber as the chill air coiled closer. We leaned back, sipping ale, laughter punctuating the quiet comfort. Only the sigh of wind through pine needles and a sporadic owl's cry disturbed the profound tranquility. Precisely the serene detachment we craved. Then, sometime after midnight's turn, it sliced through the stillness. A peal of laughter, distant yet distinct, sharp as obsidian. Reese and I went rigid, gazes locking across the dying embers. His face mirrored my own sudden disquiet. This wasn't the sound of merriment. It held a bizarre, discordant quality, tinged with something akin to derision. Did you catch that? My voice, a strained whisper, betrayed the calm I feigned. Reese nodded, a quick, jerky movement, his eyes scanning the impenetrable blackness beyond the firelight. His features tightened. Campers nearby, maybe? The thought offered fragile comfort, yet intuition screamed otherwise. No soul had crossed our path all day. We were leagues from any known route. Just someone else enjoying the night, I rationalized, clinging to the mundane. But minutes later, the sound returned, amplified, nearer. It reverberated amongst the trees, a cold finger tracing my spine. It possessed no warmth, no human glee. It was a hollow, vacant echo of mirth. We doused the flames, plunging our sanctuary into shadow, choosing obscurity over visibility. In the sudden inkiness, the surrounding woods transformed, acquiring a palpable malevolence. Each nocturnal murmur gained monstrous proportions, The snap of a twig, the whisper of foliage, the spectral laughter that drifted, phantom-like, on the breeze. Eventually, the laughter ceased. A shared, shallow breath escaped us, taut with fragile hope. Then came the footfalls, hushed, deliberate, tracing the perimeter of our clearing. My eyes strained against the oppressive dark, a moonless, cloud-choked sky offering no reprieve. Beside me, Reese was stone, his breath held captive in his chest. Louder now, the steps circled our fragile canvas shelters, a calculated patrol, a predator aware of its quarry, savoring the chase. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. The torch felt heavy in my fist, its potential beam a beacon I dared not light, lest we betray our exact position. Abruptly, the pacing ceased. Silence descended, thick and suffocating. Then, jarringly, a new sound, the violation of our supplies, a deliberate rifling through bags, objects overturned, the clatter of tin, the rasp of nylon, the aggressive rip of zippers. Reese remained beside me, a statue carved from fear, his breath still locked away. An age passed in that violation before it too fell silent. Stillness returned, heavier than before. We remained paralyzed, expectant. My fingers clenched the torch, a desperate talisman. Cold sweat beaded on my skin. Every sinew screamed with tension. And then, the laugh. So close now it seemed to breathe down our necks. My control snapped. With a trembling hand, I ignited the torch, slicing a frantic arc through the blackness. Empty space, only trees, contorted shadows, the violated clearing. Yet the laughter erupted again, mocking, now from the opposite side, playing with us, impossibly mobile. "We need to go, now," I hissed, the words shuddering. Reese offered no resistance. We scrambled for our packs, essentials forgotten in the desperate urge for distance. I cared nothing for what we left behind, only for escape from this cursed ground. We plunged onto the trail, a headlong flight into the unknown, our torch beams stabbing wildly at the oppressive gloom. Our pounding feet and the frantic thrumming in my ears were the only sounds we made, but not the only sounds there were. Behind us, the forest betrayed pursuit, the sharp crack of undergrowth, the dry skitter of leaves, and always that damnable disembodied laughter dogging our heels. Compulsively, I'd risk a backward glance, heart seizing, expecting something. Always, there was only the frantic dance of shadows caught in our lights. Reese, his face a mask of pale concentration, forged ahead, his terror a silent twin to my own. Perhaps an hour clawed by before we stumbled into another small clearing, collapsing, lungs burning, slick with cold sweat. My torch beam swept the tree line, held in a trembling grip. The silence here felt wrong, pregnant, as if the very woods held its breath in anticipation. Then, the sound returned. Footsteps approaching from the path we'd fled, measured, unhurried, as if our pause was expected. Reese's eyes flared wide. We lurched to our feet, retreating instinctively, torch beams wavering violently towards the encroaching sound. "Who's out there?" The challenge emerged, thin, ragged. Silence answered, save for the relentless advance, closing in. Primal instinct shrieked, "Run!" Yet my feet were leaden anchors. Paralyzed, I stared into the void between the trees, waiting for the inevitable reveal. And then, it materialized. A silhouette detaching itself from the deeper shadows at the clearing's edge. Tall, vague, its features swallowed by the night. Motionless, it simply stood, observing. An Arctic dread flooded my veins. No face was visible, no details discernible, yet the weight of its unseen gaze was undeniable, pinning us like moths, watching, waiting. Reese's hand clamped onto my arm, a jolt that broke the spell. "Liam, run!" he choked out, voice fractured with terror. We spun and fled, abandoning all thought but escape. No looking back. Our boots hammered the earth, breath tearing raggedly from our chests. Direction dissolved. Getting lost was trivial compared to the entity behind us. On we sprinted, the woods a vertiginous blur, grasping shadows reaching. Behind, the implacable footfalls persisted, keeping pace no matter our speed. And the laughter, that hollow sound, pursued us through the trees, drawing ever nearer. Time stretched into an eternity of panicked flight, before, blessedly, a familiar trail marker emerged from the gloom. A small cairn we'd noted on our way in. Hope surged, raw and desperate. The parking lot sanctuary was close. We drove our protesting limbs harder, muscles screaming, air searing our lungs. We burst into the empty lot, scrabbling for the car like drowning men reaching for shore. Keys trembled violently in my grasp. The lock resisted, once, twice, before finally yielding. We threw ourselves inside, slammed doors, thumbed locks. The engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as I wrenched us away from that place. A glance in the rearview mirror revealed only receding darkness, the silent, empty woods. The long drive back unfolded in absolute silence. Reese and I stared rigidly ahead, trapped in the wreckage of the night's events. What had stalked us through the dark? The question hung unanswered, unwelcome. I only knew this. Something inhuman had watched, had hunted, had toyed with us in that wilderness. And its laughter, devoid of all joy, cold and sharp as glacial ice, would echo in the chambers of my memory forever. The night pressed in, thick and starless, miles dissolving behind me until the car shuddered, coughed a final metallic sigh, and surrendered to silence. Rain, a relentless percussion on the roof, drummed against the sudden stillness. Hours I'd driven, yearning only for the distant glow of home, and now this. Dashboard lights flickered once, twice, then winked out. Utterly stranded. A chill, deeper than the damp air seeping through the door seals, coiled in my gut. Outside, nothing but the deluge, the blacktop ribbon swallowed by an impenetrable forest, flanking the road. My phone, predictably, displayed only mocking emptiness. No bars, no lifeline. Drawing a ragged breath, I fought the rising tide of panic. The gas station. How far back? Miles, surely, through this blinding curtain of water. Then, a glimmer through the smeared windshield. Twin beams, distant but definite, slicing the downpour. Hope, fragile and fleeting, fluttered in my chest. Someone. Help, perhaps? A ride. Shoving the car door open against the wind, I stepped out, waving frantically as the vehicle approached, slowed, and eased onto the shoulder behind my dead machine. An old pickup, bruised and weathered, its engine a low growl against the storm. The passenger window descended with a reluctant squeak. Inside, shadowed beneath the brim of a worn cap, pulled low, a man regarded me. 40s maybe, face obscured by a dense beard. A flicker of disquiet pricked at me, sharp and unwelcome, but I pushed it down. Need assistance? His voice, a gravelly rumble barely audible over the rain's roar. Yes, I managed, shouting slightly. My car just gave out. Battery, I think. Any chance you have jumper cables? He nodded, a slow, deliberate motion, his gaze drifting to my vehicle. Might have something stowed. Let me have a look. Please, I said, stepping back onto the soggy verge. He emerged from the cab, deliberate in his movements, heavy boots crunching on the wet gravel. He ambled to my car, leaned under the raised hood, a silent silhouette against the rain-streaked dark. Water plastered his clothes to him, streamed from his cap, but he seemed oblivious. Relief warred with that persistent unease as I watched him. Maybe this was salvation after all. He straightened, turning back towards me, his expression unreadable in the gloom. Looks worse than the battery, he stated, his tone flat, unchanging. Could take some time. My stomach plummeted. Oh, right. Well, could you possibly give me a lift to that last gas station? A pause stretched, filled only by the drumming rain. Then, another slow nod. Aye, get in. Hesitation clawed at me again, a cold premonition. But the night, the rain, the isolation. Choices were few. I climbed into the passenger seat, the heavy door thudding shut behind me as he settled back behind the wheel. The cab smelled stale, a blend of old tobacco smoke and something else, earthy and vaguely metallic. The truck lurched forward, its engine complaining as we merged back onto the sodden asphalt. Silence reigned for several minutes, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic sweep of the wipers and the relentless cascade against the glass. How far to the station? I ventured, needing to break the tension. He didn't respond immediately, eyes fixed forward, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Not far, he said eventually. The words clipped. I nodded, feigning ease, but his tone tightened the knot of anxiety in my chest. Shifting uncomfortably, I peered out the window, but the rain reduced the world to blurred, rushing shapes, dark sentinels of trees flashing past in the gloom. After another strained silence, he spoke again, his voice softer now, almost conspiratorial. Fortunate I happened along. This road's quiet after dark. Yes, fortunate, I echoed, the word tasting false on my tongue. He slanted a look at me, his eyes shadowed pits, unreadable. Where you bound? Home. I kept it simple, vague. No need for details. He grunted acknowledgement, lapsing back into silence. It pressed down, suffocating, charged with unspoken things. My heart began a heavier rhythm against my ribs. Something felt profoundly wrong about this man, this ride. Time stretched, distorted by the rain and the rhythmic wipers. We'd been driving longer than seemed right. I glanced towards the dashboard clock, blank, useless. How long had it been? Are we nearly there? My voice trembled slightly, despite my efforts. Again, the pause before his answer. His gaze remained locked on the road ahead. Finally, not much further. The words hung in the air, colder somehow. A shiver traced its way down my spine. I scanned the darkness outside, searching for any familiar landmark, finding none. Just endless rain-lashed trees. Panic began to bloom, cold and sharp. This wasn't the way. I knew it. Are you certain this is correct? I asked, striving for calm. I don't recall the station being this far out. He shot me a sideways glance, his eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. Don't you worry, I know these roads. A certainty laced his tone, but it wasn't reassuring. It was possessive. My skin crawled. I shifted again, my gaze flicking to the door handle, my fingers twitching towards it. The storm raged outside. But suddenly, the wild, wet darkness seemed preferable to the confines of this cab. Before thought could translate into action, he slowed the truck, turning sharply off the asphalt onto a muddy, rutted track that vanished into the black maw of the woods. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cold sweat broke across my forehead. "Where are we going? Why are we stopping here?" I demanded, the tremor now undeniable in my voice. He looked directly at me then, a slow, unsettling smile spreading across his face beneath the beard. "Just a small detour. Won't be but a moment." Every instinct screamed, "Get out! Run!" But fear paralyzed me even as my mind raced. Be smart. Phone. Useless. Still no signal. Utterly alone. He cut the engine, plunging us into a deeper silence, broken only by the rain's insistent drumming on the metal roof, now deafeningly loud. He sat there watching me, that disturbing smile fixed in place. "All right then," he murmured, his voice low, chilling. "Let's be going." I remained frozen, my hand hovering near the door latch. "Going where?" He leaned slightly towards me, the smile widening, predatory. "Come along now. I won't bite." That snapped the paralysis. Adrenaline surged. I wrenched the door open and scrambled out, tumbling into the driving rain, the mud sucking at my shoes. "Hey, where do you think you're off to?" His shout echoed behind me, sharp with surprise and anger. I didn't look back, didn't hesitate, just ran, plunging blindly into the dripping, tangled darkness of the woods. My feet slipped and slid on the treacherous ground, breath tearing at my lungs in ragged, panicked gasps. Behind me, heavy footfalls crashed through the undergrowth, closer than I liked, relentless. My legs burned, chest aching, but I pushed onward, fueled by sheer terror. Branches clawed at my face and clothes, mud clung heavy to my feet, but the thought of him, of what he intended, propelled me forward. Better the unforgiving forest than his chilling smile. Then, a faint luminescence ahead, a pale smudge against the oppressive black. Hope surged anew. Stumbling towards it, heart pounding like a drum against my ribs, I saw it resolve into a small, dilapidated cabin, windows dark voids, door hanging slightly ajar. No time for caution. I burst through the opening, slamming the warped wooden door shut behind me, leaning back against it, gasping for air. Empty, silent, save for my own ragged breathing and the storm outside, a fragile sanctuary. Footsteps sounded outside, slow, measured, circling the small structure. My heart leaped into my throat. I pressed myself flat against the rough wall, straining to remain absolutely still, praying he wouldn't find the entrance, wouldn't come in. The footsteps paused directly outside the door. Silence, stretched, taut as a wire, then a low creak as the door swung inward. His silhouette filled the frame, blocking the rain-streaked night. He stepped inside, eyes sweeping the dim interior, landing on me. That twisted smile returned. "There you are," he breathed, the words laced with menace. "Told you. Nowhere to run." My eyes darted around the small space, desperate. My fingers brushed against cold, heavy metal on a cluttered table. A rusted wrench. I snatched it up, gripping the handle tightly, its weight a small comfort. He took a step towards me, his gaze locked onto mine, the smile unwavering. "Did you really think you could just leave?" Silence was my only answer, punctuated by my frantic breathing. He advanced another step. I swung the wrench with all my strength, connecting solidly with his shoulder. He staggered back with a grunt of pain, his face contorting, but he didn't go down. His eyes, when they met mine again, were dark with fury. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, lunging. I swung again, a wild, desperate blow that caught him in the side. He barely flinched. His hand shot out, clamping around my arm like a vice, his grip crushing. Panic flared, white-hot. I struggled, twisted, trying to wrench free, but his strength was overwhelming. In a final reflexive act, I kicked out hard, connecting sharply with his shin. He stumbled, his grip momentarily loosening. It was enough. I tore free and bolted for the open doorway, scrambling back out into the relentless rain. Scant seconds before he recovered, his enraged shouts echoing behind me. No stopping, no looking back, just the desperate pounding of my feet on the sodden earth. The rain blinded me, my lungs screaming for air. His furious voice pursued me through the trees, but it felt distant now, secondary to the primal need to escape. Onward, onward, driven by pure adrenaline. Then, through the curtain of rain, a familiar sight. Headlights, steady and bright, approaching on the road ahead. I stumbled out of the tree line, onto the slick asphalt, waving my arms frantically, praying, pleading silently for the car to stop. It slowed, pulling onto the shoulder, its headlights illuminating my drenched, trembling form. The Nova's aging headlights sliced the liquid night, revealing only curtains of rain, hammering the empty ribbon of asphalt. Hitchhikers were specters I routinely ignored, phantoms of the roadside. But this deluge, this elemental fury, it felt wrong, inhuman, to leave anyone adrift in its maw. How could I foretell that a single deviation from habit, one solitary act of grudging mercy, would unravel into sheer terror? The day had bled me dry, a long shift dissolving into the single desire for home, the embrace of a worn armchair, and a book to swallow me whole. Then, the heavens ruptured. The storm, a sudden violent entity, had scoured the highway clean of its usual traffic, leaving it a desolate channel, mirroring the churning sky. Squinting past the frantic rhythm of the wipers, I saw him, a silhouette anchored to the shoulder, arm raised, thumb angled toward some unseen deliverance. Even blurred by rain and distance, his saturation was absolute. Fabric clung like a desperate second skin. A tremor of empathy, unwelcome but insistent, shivered through me. No soul deserved this drenching misery. My tires hissed defiance against the slick tarmac as I eased the Nova onto the gravel verge. He approached in a lurching jog, shoulders hunched against the gale. Reaching across the passenger seat, I pushed the door open. "Gratitude," he breathed, tumbling inside, shedding rivulets onto the worn upholstery. "Thought I'd be Neptune's guest tonight." "No trouble," I offered, the words feeling thin against the sudden sharp prickle of unease crawling my spine. "Where to?" "Just onward," he murmured vaguely, chafing his hands together, a friction that seemed to generate more static than warmth. "Truly, I owe you." A nod served as my reply. Pulling back onto the highway, the metronomic sweep of the wipers became the sole percussion against the storm's drumming roar. I stole glances when the road allowed. Younger than my first impression, perhaps mid-20s. Dark hair lay plastered to his brow above a rough beard. His eyes, though, they were restless things, skittering about the cabin, never finding purchase. So, I ventured, the silence stretching taut between us. What strands a man on a night fit for Noah? A pause. Then, engine gave out, miles back. Phones dead as stone, no signal. His explanation felt incomplete, off-key, a dissonance I couldn't quite isolate. Was it the flickering avoidance in his gaze, the subtle vibration threading his voice? Paranoia, I chided myself. Just the storm, the isolation. Harsh luck, I managed. Good fortune I happened by then. He nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Yes, fortune. We drove enveloped in silence once more, punctuated only by the percussive rain and the distant growl of thunder. The road demanded my focus, yet I felt his scrutiny, a palpable weight on my periphery. The fine hairs on my nape prickled, my knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Mind the radio? I asked, desperate for any other sound to occupy the charged air. Please, he permitted. As my hand reached for the knob, the dashboard lights cast a fleeting, sickly glow. It illuminated a detail on his jacket sleeve, a dark, irregular smear that froze the marrow in my bones. It looked disturbingly like dried blood. My thoughts scattered like startled birds. An injury from the breakdown, or something else. Something whispered by the unease that had shadowed me since he'd slid into the car. I fought to keep my breathing even, a mask of nonchalance. So, I began again, my voice sounding unnervingly alien. Where exactly is onward? He shifted beside me, a subtle movement, his hand dipping toward his coat pocket. Keep driving, he instructed, his tone shearing away all pretense, leaving behind something cold, sharp-edged. I'll tell you when. The realization struck with physical force, a fist tightening in my chest. This wasn't merely a traveler inconvenienced. This was danger, distilled and sitting inches away. Possibly a fugitive, cloaked in the storm. And I was trapped with him, adrift on this deserted expanse, the tempest raging both outside and in. Options flickered and died. Overpower him. He was larger, and the unseen contents of his pocket loomed large in my imagination. A deliberate crash? At this velocity, suicide felt as probable as escape. Listen, I attempted, striving for a calm I didn't possess. I don't want trouble. Name your spot. I'll drop you. No repercussions. A laugh, brittle and devoid of humor, scraped against the confines of the car. A touch late for diplomacy, wouldn't you say? You've already peered behind the curtain. I swallowed against a throat suddenly gone to sand. I saw nothing. I lied. The untruth flimsy. I don't know who you are. Let me pull over right now. We walk away. Forget this encounter. Admirable try, Silas countered, and his hand emerged from the pocket, clutching a switchblade. The click, as the blade sprang free, echoed unnaturally loud, a metallic punctuation mark to my terror. But I'm afraid this particular journey isn't concluded. I felt the frigid kiss of steel against the side of my neck. My choices had evaporated. Action, immediate and desperate, was all that remained. Without conscious thought, I stomped the brake pedal. The Nova screamed, inertia throwing us violently forward. The blade bit shallowly, a hot sting blossoming on my skin. but there was no time for pain. Shoving the gear stick into park, I clawed for the door handle. He reacted faster. His hand, a vice, clamped onto my arm, wrenching me back. A scream tore from my throat, swallowed instantly by the storm's cacophony, a futile plea to an empty world. Quiet, he snarled, the knife pressing harder, a promise of violation against my pulse. Another peek, and I carve you smile to smile. Terror locked my limbs. Rain lashed the glass, and each lightning flash painted his face in monstrous relief, eyes wide, alight with a frantic energy that screamed of utter unpredictability. Now, he commanded, voice low, resonant with menace. We proceed. You drive. You don't stop until I decree it. Understood. A choked nod was all I could manage. Hands trembling uncontrollably, I shifted back into drive, coaxing the car forward. We plunged deeper into the storm-lashed darkness, the highway seeming to constrict around us. My mind raced, a frantic scavenger seeking any sliver of escape. Images of loved ones flickered. Would they ever know? Would the truth of this night ever surface? The knife remained a cold pressure point, a constant, intimate threat. He directed me off the main artery, onto twisting capillaries of back roads, each turn pulling us further from civilization, further from any conceivable rescue. Please, I whispered, the sound fragile. Let me go. I won't say a word. I swear it. That chilling laugh again. Still resisting the narrative, aren't you? There's no exit ramp now. Not for either of us. A sob hitched in my throat as the crushing finality of my predicament settled over me. He wasn't after a ride or my wallet. His intentions were far darker, and I was utterly at his mercy. Or was I? Rounding a sharp, unlit bend, a desperate gamble sparked in my mind. Reckless, perhaps fatal, but the only card left to play. Drawing a ragged breath, steeling myself, I wrenched the steering wheel savagely to the right. The Nova obeyed, hurtling off the pavement. We struck the sodden shoulder, tires losing all purchase on the slick grass. The world became a kaleidoscope of rain-streaked green and black as we tumbled, once, twice, a third time, before shuddering to a halt, inverted. Agony flared through me. The coppery tang of blood filled my mouth. Vision swam, but air filled my lungs. I was alive, and the knife was gone. My fingers, thick and unresponsive, fumbled with the seatbelt release. A groan beside me, Silas. Time was short. The buckle clicked free. I dropped heavily onto the car's ceiling. Ignoring the symphony of pain, protesting every movement, I crawled toward the shattered aperture of the passenger window. Rain, cold and relentless, greeted me as I dragged myself from the mangled chassis. Behind me, inside the wreck, sounds of cursing, of struggle. No time to linger. I ran, legs like leaden weights, each gasp sending shards of fire through my ribs. But I ran, into the deluge, into the mud, branches clawing at my face as I plunged into the dense woods flanking the road. From the wreckage, the distinct shatter of the driver's side window. He was out. I'll find you. His voice ripped through the storm's roar, a terrifying promise. You can't hide. I ran harder, pushing my broken body past its limits, directionless, propelled only by raw terror, deeper into the black woods where trees loomed like skeletal judges. Every shadow pulsed with menace, every rustle a potential death knell. How long I ran, I couldn't say. Time dissolved in the primal urgency of flight. Then, through the trees, a flicker. Lights. Distant, wavering, but undeniably real. A gas station, its fluorescent halo a fragile sanctuary in the oppressive dark. Summoning the last dregs of strength, I stumbled from the tree line, across the slick pavement, collapsing against the glass door. The attendant's head snapped up, eyes widening at the apparition I presented. Battered, bloodied, mud-caked. "Police!" I gasped, the word tearing at my throat. "Call them, he's coming." As the attendant reached for the phone, my legs gave out, and I slid to the linoleum floor, profound exhaustion finally claiming me. I'd made it. Safety, however tenuous. In the distance, the rising keen of sirens sliced through the storm. And for the first time since glimpsing that rain-soaked figure on the highway shoulder, I let myself truly breathe. I had navigated the longest night, survived. But the phantom touch of the blade, the echo of that chilling laugh, the memory of Silas's eyes in the storm-lit car, these ghosts would ride with me forever. The third midnight it happened. The quaintness curdled. The first time the townsfolk drifted towards the square under the moon's cold eye, I'd dismissed it. Some local peculiarity, charming in its obscurity. But witnessing it again, and then again, I felt the prickling certainty of stumbling into shadows, far deeper than any sleepy hamlet should possess. This place, Havenwood, wasn't sleeping. It was waiting, and my own prying eyes were dragging me towards its hungry heart. My name is Rowan. 2 months prior, I'd arrived, fresh from the structured world of academia, eager to plant my social work roots in what seemed like fertile, tranquil ground. Havenwood unfolded like a postcard, gabled Victorian homes draped in ivy, riots of color in manicured gardens, smiles offered freely on the sun-dappled streets. Yet, the smiles. They were like porcelain veneers, flawless but cold, never quite touching the depths behind the eyes. It was Mrs. Gable, one of my first clients, brittle and bird-like, who crystallized the unease. Discussing meal deliveries, her lips remained curved in unwavering pleasantry, even as she spoke of her departed husband, a mask flawlessly maintained. Later, nursing coffee in the town diner, the low snarl of an argument between two men ceased the instant my presence registered. Their faces snapped back to vacant agreeability, talk turning abruptly to the predictable weather, those unsettling smiles firmly in place. But the midnight assemblies shattered any lingering illusion of normalcy. Drawn by an insomnia born of vague disquiet, I saw them, figures of all ages, moving with a silent, unnerving purpose towards the town square. A moth to a flame, I followed, melting into the deeper shadows cast by ancient oaks. What unfolded beneath the impassive moon froze the marrow in my bones. The square pulsed with near the entire populace, a silent congregation encircling the moss-slicked fountain. A low, guttural chanting began, a subvocal thrumming in a dialect that scraped against my understanding. At the circle's nexus stood Magistrate Thorne, the town's ostensible leader, clutching a tome bound in what looked unnervingly like skin. My breath hitched. I shrank behind the rough bark of a tree, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This wasn't quaint. It was primal, ripped from some forgotten, blood-soaked scripture. Thorn raised a knife, its blade catching the moonlight like a shard of fallen star. A young woman stepped from the circle, her face serene, offering her upturned palm. The blade descended. A single ruby drop fell, striking the fountain water with an audible hiss that seemed amplified in the unnatural quiet. Perhaps I gasped. Perhaps a twig snapped underfoot. Suddenly, every head swiveled, a field of phosphorescent stares fixing on my hiding place, eyes glinting with a faint predatory light. I didn't think. I fled, the sound of my own ragged breathing roaring in my ears, not daring to stop until the flimsy security of my apartment door was bolted behind me, curtains drawn tight against the watching dark. Daylight brought a horrifyingly seamless return to the veneer of normalcy. Neighbors waved, shopkeepers smiled. The relentless perfection of the lawns seemed almost aggressive in its cheer. Yet now, I saw the wrongness beneath. The subtle synchronicity in their movements, the utter absence of friction, no petty crime, no public disagreements, in a community this size. Had I dreamt it? A stress-induced phantasm. The rational part of my mind grasped at straws, but the visceral memory of those glowing eyes, the scent of old blood on the night air, refused to fade. Cautiously, I began to probe the town's history. In the dusty, neglected archives, amidst brittle pages smelling of decay and forgotten lives, a pattern emerged. Decades folding back on themselves revealed cyclical disappearances. Tourists who checked in, but never out. Itinerant workers swallowed by the town's placid surface. New residents whose tenures were unnervingly brief. Vanished. The truth, when it surfaced, was colder than the midnight air in the square. Havenwood wasn't founded by pioneers, but by a sect escaping persecution in the 1800s, practitioners of a ghastly pact, belief in ritual sacrifice of outsiders to secure unnatural prosperity and longevity for their own. Generations had guarded this secret, weaving it into the very fabric of the town. Action was imperative, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. The police chief's face had been among the chanting throng. My own supervisor at the social services office had stood near the fountain's edge. Every smile could mask complicity. Isolation became my reality, an island in a sea of smiling predators. My weapon became a hidden camera, my mission to capture the cracks in their facade, the fleeting moments when the mask slipped, revealing something cold and watchful underneath. The strange, unsettling symbols carved deep into the foundations of the oldest buildings, like scars on the town's skin. The chilling drone of their chants, recorded from afar, which made my own blood feel sluggish and cold when replayed. Weeks bled into a month, paranoia tightening its grip. Eyes followed me. Mrs. Gable's hand lingered too long on my arm during an accidental encounter at the market, her touch surprisingly strong. My apartment door, triple-checked locked, was found ajar one afternoon. Then the warnings escalated. A desiccated crow laid carefully on my doorstep. A slip of paper in my mailbox bearing only two stark words: leave or join. The terrifying discovery that my car's brake lines had been expertly severed. Escape. I had to escape, to deliver the horrifying truth I'd painstakingly gathered to someone, anyone, outside Havenwood's influence. But the town itself seemed to conspire against me. My car, repaired, would mysteriously stall miles from the border. A freak thunderstorm would wash out the only bridge. On one desperate attempt, the roads seemed to coil back on themselves, depositing me, bewildered and sweating, back on Havenwood's familiar, menacing streets. The harvest moon rose, bloated and orange, painting the town in eerie light. My escape was planned, bag packed and hidden. Then came the knock, heavy, final. Magistrate Thorne stood on my threshold, flanked by impassive town elders. "Rowan," he greeted, his voice smooth as river stones, yet his eyes held the chill of the water beneath. "We should converse." They flowed into my small apartment, their presence sucking the air from the room. The trap was sprung. "You possess a commendable curiosity," Thorne observed, settling into my armchair as if it were his throne. "Havenwood thrives on new perspectives, but curiosity, unchecked, becomes disruptive." I stood my ground, forcing steadiness into my voice. "I know about the rituals, the disappearances, the cult. I have proof. If I vanish, it all goes to the authorities." Thorne's smile remained, a placid lake over lightless depths. The air grew colder. "Ah, Rowan, you grasp the what, but not the why, nor the how long. Centuries, my dear. We have endured for centuries. Do you truly imagine you are the first to unearth our traditions?" He gestured. An elder produced a familiar, worn notebook. My journal. Bile rose in my throat. "Your diligence is remarkable," Thorne murmured, flipping through my frantic observations. "Under different circumstances, you might have integrated beautifully. Now," he sighed, a theatrical sound, devoid of genuine regret. "You present a conundrum." I edged backwards, eyes darting, seeking an impossible exit. They formed a silent crescent before me. "Havenwood requires equilibrium, Rowan," Thorne continued, his tone almost pedagogical. "Our enduring vitality demands reciprocation. Willing participants are cleaner, less complicated. But for those who pry too deeply," he paused, letting the implication hang heavy, "adjustments must be made." As he spoke, a subtle wrongness began to ripple through the elders. Flesh seemed to flow like cooling wax, bone structures subtly shifting beneath their placid masks. Their eyes began to pulse with that same faint, unholy luminescence I'd seen in the square. "You face a final decision," Thorne stated, rising. The knife from the ritual, or one terrifyingly like it, appeared in his hand, its edge seeming to drink the dim light. "Join us. Embrace the truth of Havenwood. Become one of us. In substance." He didn't need to voice the alternative. It emanated from the shifting figures around him, a promise of oblivion. In that suffocating moment, surrounded by inhuman shapes and offered a cursed salvation, instinct took over. I ran. The next minutes blurred into a frantic nightmare, a chase not just through streets, but through grasping shadows and whispering architecture, the entire town seeming to pulse with a collective, malevolent will. Somehow, lungs screaming, terror lending wings to my feet, I reached the invisible demarcation, the town limits. As I stumbled across that unseen boundary, a howl tore through the night behind me, a sound ripped from a place beyond grief or rage. I risked a glance back. The townsfolk stood clustered at Havenwood's edge, a gallery of horrors held captive, unwilling or unable to pursue me further. I collapsed at the sheriff's station in the next town, babbling my incoherent tale. They heard, but they didn't believe. Deputies sent to investigate reported nothing amiss, just a quiet, picture-perfect town called Havenwood. I never went back. I fled the state, shed my name like a snake sheds skin, attempting to stitch together a new existence from the tattered remnants of the old. But the memory is a brand. Havenwood exists, a monstrous secret hiding behind white picket fences and neighborly waves. Sometimes when the wind sighs late at night, I fancy I can hear that low guttural chanting carried on the breeze. I wonder how many other Havenwoods fester beneath the surface of the mundane world, drawing unsuspecting souls into their ancient hungry webs. I escaped the place, but the horror of it is embedded deep within me, a shard of ice in the soul. And I know, with chilling certainty, that Magistrate Thorne and his flock are out there, watching, waiting. Because once you've seen behind their masks, the choice is eternally stark. Join their damned communion or become the next offering. A flicker behind the damask drapes of Mr. Silas Blackwood's drawing room window. Again. Third night running. 3 o'clock, the hour when the world holds its breath, and down my spine, an icy rivulet traced its path. That silhouette, stark against the faint interior light, fixed on the Stygian blackness beyond his panes. It wasn't right. Something fundamental had fractured in my elderly neighbor, and an intuition, cold and sharp, whispered that our placid suburban avenue was poised on the brink of a revelation that would irrevocably alter its very soul. For nigh on half a decade, Silas Blackwood had been my neighbor, a bastion of quiet cordiality, albeit one draped in reserve. He watched my house during my absences. I, in turn, tamed his unruly lawn in summer and vanquished the snowdrifts from his path in winter, a comfortable, unspoken equilibrium. But the balance had tilted. Subtly at first, then with alarming momentum. It began with fortifications. New, formidable locks bristled on every door, every window frame. Then arrived the electronic eyes, their tiny crimson lamps blinking balefully from eaves and corners, silent sentinels guarding his domain. Initially, I attributed it to the creeping anxieties of age. Mr. Blackwood, after all, was nearing his 8th decade, and solitude can breed phantoms. Yet, the nightly vigils commenced. Jolted awake by mundane needs, I'd glimpse him, a sentinel stationed at his window, gaze riveted on some unseen point in the enveloping darkness. By day, his movements grew furtive, a rapid dart from car to threshold, head swiveling, scanning the familiar street as if anticipating an ambush from the benign shrubbery. Once, I ventured a casual probe, remarking on his apparent tension. The reaction was galvanic. His eyes, usually placid, dilated with an unmistakable visceral fear. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a forced, hollow chuckle. You know, he'd deflected, the sound brittle. One can't exercise too much caution these days. Before another query could form, he had retreated, the heavy front door thudding shut like a vault. That exchange echoed, a persistent refrain, as I stood now at my own window, mirroring his vigil, observing the watcher. Logic screamed for retreat, for the oblivion of sleep, for the sanctuary of mind in one's own affairs. But a deeper, more insistent current pulled at me. I was compelled to understand. The following morning, a fabricated illness kept me from work. Precisely at 1000 hours, punctual as ever, Mr. Blackwood departed for his daily provisions run. My moment had arrived. Guilt gnawed, a felonious sensation prickling my skin as I traversed the dew-kissed grass, dividing our properties, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. A neighborly check-in, I rationalized, a simple assurance of well-being. Liar. I knew, with chilling certainty, I was transgressing a significant boundary. The front door yielded. Not anticipating such ease, I paused, surprised, before stepping into the hush. The air hung thick, imbued with the fusty aroma of aged paper and an indeterminate underlying scent I couldn't quite parse. At first blush, all seemed ordinary. The meticulously arranged parlor, sepia-toned ancestors gazing from the mantelpiece, a half-finished cup of coffee cooling on an end table. Yet, venturing deeper, dissonant notes emerged. Miniature lenses winked from unexpected places, tucked behind picture frames, nestled in ceiling corners, one artfully disguised within a faux fern. The kitchen harbored stacks of ledgers, pages dense with what appeared to be cryptic notations, juxtaposed with precise times. Tremors began in my hands as I ascended the staircase, the protesting groan of a riser amplifying in the stillness. This is absurd, a voice reasoned internally. A perfectly rational explanation must exist. Perhaps Silas was merely an enthusiast of advanced home security. Perhaps retirement had spurred a late-blooming career in espionage fiction. The upper corridor presented a series of closed doors. The first resisted my touch, locked. The second likewise. But the third, situated at the hallway's terminus, swung inward with a protracted creak that seemed to reverberate through the very structure of the house. I entered, and motion deserted me. Darkness reigned, save for the spectral luminescence cast by a constellation of computer monitors. Dozens. Each screen displayed a distinct vista, our street bathed in morning sun, the intimate interiors of neighboring homes, glimpses into local shops and businesses. A wave of vertigo washed over me as the truth crystallized with horrifying clarity. I was witnessing live surveillance feeds from across our entire community. And there, captured on one glowing rectangle, was the familiar pattern of my own living room carpet. My thoughts fractured, struggling to reconcile the image of Silas Blackwood, the gentle old man, the bearer of welcoming home-baked cookies, with this clandestine orchestrator of pervasive espionage. For what purpose? What conceivable gain? So consumed was I by the disorienting revelation that the subtle click of the front door opening downstairs nearly escaped my notice. Nearly. The sound snapped me back, raw panic flooding my system. Blackwood returned prematurely, and I stood squarely within his sanctum of secrets. My eyes darted, desperate for concealment in the sparsely furnished chamber. The closet, the sole viable refuge. I plunged inside, pulling the door almost shut, just as measured footsteps began their ascent. Through the narrow slit, I watched Silas Blackwood enter. He moved with an air of focused industry, seating himself before the bank of screens, fingers flying across a keyboard. I ceased breathing, convinced the frantic hammering of my own heart would betray me. Minutes stretched into an eternity. He worked, occasionally murmuring indecipherable comments to the flickering images. Finally, agonizingly, he rose and departed the room. Only when his tread faded on the lower level did I dare to stir. My limbs screamed from the confinement, my pulse still a frantic tattoo. Escape was paramount, yet departure felt incomplete without comprehension. I crept towards the monitors, eyes scanning the mosaic of captured lives. Then it leaped out at me, a document displayed prominently on one screen. The header declared, Operation Neighborhood Watch, Surveillance Report. As my eyes devoured the text, disparate elements began to coalesce. Silas Blackwood wasn't merely succumbing to age-induced paranoia. He was a relic, a former operative of some clandestine intelligence service. The report meticulously detailed his ongoing mission, monitoring the vicinity for potential threats. But threats against what? The deeper I read, the denser the fog of confusion became. Suddenly, a firm hand clamped onto my shoulder. I whirled, gasping, to find Blackwood directly behind me, his gaze transformed, glacial, unyielding. I had hoped, he stated, his voice unnervingly level. It wouldn't necessitate this. I've always regarded you favorably, you understand. But curiosity, unchecked, breeds peril. My mouth opened to stammer an apology, a plea, anything, but sound refused to form. Blackwood emitted a profound sigh. An explanation is owed, I concede. He conceded, gesturing towards the chair he had recently vacated. Be warned, however, once this truth is known, there is no reversion. For a fleeting instant, flight seemed possible, but where? And who would credit such an outlandish tale? Slowly, deliberately, I sank into the chair, my gaze locked onto Silas Blackwood's inscrutable face. He began to speak. As the narrative unfolded, layer by astonishing layer, the very foundations of my perceived reality shifted. Blackwood wasn't merely observing our neighborhood. He was its guardian, protecting it from entities, from forces, beyond the scope of ordinary comprehension. Our unremarkable suburban enclave, it transpired, rested upon something immensely valuable, dangerously potent, a secret coveted by powerful, ruthless factions. Blackwood's lifelong charge had been to ensure its continued concealment, to safeguard the slumbering potential buried beneath our manicured lawns. But why reveal this to me? I managed, my voice thin, when his account finally paused. Why not simply eliminate the complication? A flicker of warmth touched Blackwood's features. Because, he replied, a note of weariness coloring his tone, I am growing old. This undertaking, it exceeds the capacity of one man, indefinitely. I have observed you, you see, for years, awaiting the opportune juncture. You possess keen perception, resourcefulness, and crucially, a genuine investment in this community. I believe you are prepared to inherit this mantle. My mind spun, caught in the turbulent wake of the past few hours. My world tilted, inverted. Instinct urged refusal, flight, a desperate clawing back towards blissful ignorance. Yet, as my eyes drifted towards the monitors, towards the familiar faces of my neighbors, individuals woven into the fabric of my life, I recognized the impossibility of retreat. What must I do? The words emerged, seemingly of their own volition. A smile, faint but distinct, touched Blackwood's lips, relief softening the hard lines around his eyes. Firstly, he declared, we must enhance your domestic security infrastructure. You will require significantly more cameras. Leaving Silas Blackwood's house that day, the afternoon sun seemed somehow diminished, the familiar world cast in a more somber, complex light. But alongside the apprehension pulsed a novel sensation: purpose. I was no longer merely an inhabitant of this street. I was its custodian. Now, ensconced within my own nascent command center, monitoring the screens, preserving our shared perilous secret, I often revisit that transformative day. Occasionally, a flickering image captures a ghost of my former self, untroubled, oblivious to the currents running deep beneath the tranquil surface. A part of me mourns that lost innocence, that uncomplicated existence. Mostly, however, I embrace the truth, terrifying though it remains. Because in this shadowed reality, knowledge isn't merely power. It is the very currency of survival. Flames danced, spitting embers into the vast, crisp canvas of the mountain night. Around the fire pit, the bright constellations of my children's laughter echoed, momentarily banishing the deep silence of the wilderness. Our first evening in the remote sanctuary, a haven carved from pines and distance. Perfection, or so it seemed. A fragile illusion, poised to shatter into the kind of terror that embeds itself deep within memory's marrow. My name is Ilara. 38 years spun from the threads of suburban Chicago life, woven around my husband, Liam, and our 2 children, Maya, perched on the cusp of 13, and 9-year-old Leo. Months we'd dreamt of this escape, a deliberate shedding of schedules and screens. The cabin, discovered through the blue light of a late-night search, promised just that. A timbered heart deep within the Canadian wilds, leagues from any semblance of settlement, adrift in a sea of ancient forest. Days unfolded like sun-warmed maps. We traced trails through dappled woods, cast lines into the lake's glassy surface, and surrendered evenings to the immensity of the star-strewn sky. The children, unbound from digital tethers, rediscovered the earth beneath their feet. Liam and I found quiet spaces to breathe, to simply be. Then, on the 3rd night, marshmallows charring over dwindling coals, the forest exhaled a sound alien to its usual nocturnal whispers. Footsteps, measured, weighty, undeniably human. Liam rose, a silhouette against the fire glow, casting his voice into the swallowing darkness. Anyone out there? Silence answered, thick and watchful, stitched only with the familiar thrum of crickets. A trick of the ear, we reasoned, the wilderness playing on city-frayed nerves. Oh, the retrospective clarity of ignored premonition. Sleep's fragile sanctuary shattered later that night. A violent splintering sound ripped through the cabin's quietude. Before consciousness fully caught hold, our bedroom door imploded inwards. 3 specters filled the frame, faces lost behind woolen masks, gunmetal gleaming dully in the ambient gloom. "Nobody moves!" The command cracked like ice. My pulse became a frantic drum against my ribs. Liam's instinct was pure defense, a shield thrown before me, but a rough hand wrenched him away. The children. Where? Another voice grated. Please. The word tore from my throat, thin and trembling. They're only children. Please don't. The tallest figure, the clear nexus of their menace, whose startlingly blue eyes bored through the mask's openings, gave a curt nod. Two figures vanished, reappearing moments later with Maya and Leo clutched in their grasp. My children, faces streaked with tears, eyes wide with primal fear. Mama. Leo's whimper pierced me. An abyss opened, the chasm between my desperate urge to comfort and the stark, terrifying uncertainty of our fate. We were marshaled like livestock into the main room, forced onto the worn springs of the sofa. The leader, Silas, paced before us, a predator contained, his weapon a constant menacing pendulum. Pay attention. His voice, unnervingly level, sliced through the tension. We require sanctuary, a place to disappear for a time. You will accommodate us. Your compliance is your best chance at seeing another dawn. Liam, ever the guardian, found his voice, tight but steady. Take anything, valuables, the car. Just let my wife and children leave. A dry rasp, devoid of humor, escaped Silas. Regrettably, it's not quite so transactional. Our fates for now are intertwined. Fragments of their stories surfaced in the ensuing hours, dropped like shards of glass. Fugitives. A high-stakes robbery in the city miles south. Our isolated haven. Their unplanned refuge until the pursuit cooled. We existed within the cabin's confines, under their unblinking surveillance. Permitted movement, but never freedom. One, the youngest, Finn, carried a hesitant air, a flicker of discomfort betraying his rough exterior. His counterpart, Ronan, was all jagged edges and quick temper, his firearm leaping readily at perceived infractions. Yet it was Silas, the leader, who radiated the deepest chill. A glacial calculation resided behind those blue eyes, an unnerving pragmatism, suggesting human life was merely a variable in his equation. Days bled into one another, each dawn breaking on the same tightrope walk, soothing the children's anxieties while navigating the captor's volatile moods. Liam and I communicated in the silent language of shared fear, eyes meeting across rooms, searching for an opening, a strategy, anything. But with our phones seized and every move scrutinized, hope felt like a distant shore. The fifth day arrived heavy, with unspoken dread. I observed Finn, his gaze repeatedly straying to the windows, a nervous energy thrumming beneath his stillness. A brief opportunity arose when Silas and Ronan stepped onto the porch, momentarily preoccupied. Seizing the fragile moment, I moved closer. Finn. My whisper barely disturbed the air. Help us. It's wrong. You see that, don't you? His eyes met mine, a battlefield of fear and conscience warring within them. They'd kill me, Ilara. They might kill us, I countered, desperation sharpening my tone. Not for me, for Maya, for Leo. Silas and Ronan re-entered before he could form a reply, but the brief exchange had altered something. A fissure had appeared in his resolve. A seed of dissent, however small, had found purchase. Later, wrapped in the artificial quiet of forced slumber, Finn materialized beside me in the shadowed kitchen. The rear door, his voice was a thread of sound. Unlocked, after midnight, don't look back. He melted back into the darkness. Adrenaline surged, a dizzying cocktail of hope and terror. A chance, lethally perilous, yet the only one we had. I woke Liam, communicating the impossible plan through urgent gestures and fragmented whispers in the dark. Then, the children, waking them gently, impressing upon their young minds the life or death need for silence. Our movement towards the back door was excruciatingly slow, each protesting floorboard amplifying into a thunderclap in the suffocating stillness. Fingers trembling, inches from the door handle, a voice sliced through the gloom, freezing us solid. Leaving so soon? Silas, standing in the hallway's mouth, weapon leveled unwaveringly at us. Despair crashed over me, freedom snatched away at the final instant. Then, impossibly, Finn emerged from the deeper shadows behind Silas, his own pistol now starkly visible, aimed not at us, but at his leader. Let them walk, Silas. This ends now. The air crackled, thick with imminent violence. Silas, calculating the odds, perhaps noting Ronan still slept, slowly, reluctantly, lowered his gun. A grave error, Finn, he snarled, venom dripping from the words. My only error was trusting you, Finn retorted, his voice gaining strength despite a visible tremor. He flicked his gaze towards us. Run, go, I'll handle this. We bolted, needing no further urging, plunging into the cold embrace of the forest night. Air tore at our lungs, branches clawed at our clothes. Behind us, muffled shouts erupted, the sickening thud of a struggle. Sounds I refused to dissect, focusing only on forward motion. We ran blindly, fueled by terror, until exhaustion forced us to halt in a moon-dappled clearing. Gasping for breath, the impossible truth settled. Alive, free. Yet safety remained elusive. We were adrift in an ocean of trees, directionless, unequipped, pursued perhaps. Liam, his voice raspy but firm, pulled us together. We can't stop. They could follow. Using the indifferent stars as our uncertain compass, we pushed northward, stumbling onward through the undergrowth, praying for the miracle of a road, a light, any sign of human passage. Maya and Leo flagged, their small bodies spent, but raw fear was a relentless goad, pushing us beyond endurance. Dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised pastels when the most exquisite music reached our ears, the distant hum of engines. Hope surged anew. We scrambled faster, bursting finally from the dense tree line onto the improbable asphalt ribbon of a highway. Relief washed over us as a transport truck slowed, its air brakes hissing. The driver, a man named Gus with weary, kind eyes, took in our disheveled state, listened to our fractured story with widening disbelief, and reached for his phone without hesitation. He ferried us toward the nearest town, toward safety. What followed was a whirlwind, hushed police interviews under fluorescent lights, gentle prodding from medics, choked calls relaying our survival to frantic loved ones. We learned later that Finn, improbably, had overpowered both Silas and Ronan. holding them until the authorities swarmed the cabin. His courageous testimony, woven with ours, sealed their fate. Long years behind bars. Driving homeward, the familiar landscape blurring past, my thoughts spiraled back to the cabin etched in shadow. The residue of fear lingered, a phantom ache beneath the surface, scars invisible but deeply felt. Yet, alongside it bloomed an unexpected fierce gratitude for Finn's improbable turn, for the sinewy resilience of my children, for the simple, profound kindness of Gus. Above all, a quiet awe settled within me for the strength we hadn't known we possessed until it was summoned by terror. Our family, close-knit before, now felt fused by the crucible of those days, annealed into something stronger, more elemental. That wilderness retreat, sought for peace, had instead become the stage for our deepest nightmare. But observing Liam beside me, meeting the tired but steady gazes of Maya and Leo in the rearview mirror, alive, whole, together, a certainty took root. Whatever storms might lie ahead, we would weather them. We had stared into the abyss and walked away, discovering in the heart of that darkness an unyielding core of strength we never knew existed. The idyllic escape had descended into horror, yet through surviving it, we found ourselves